out there and TGIF. Welcome to the Journey to CEO Success podcast. I'm your co-host, Melissa Saunders, along with Patrick Thean, entrepreneur, CEO coach, and best-selling author. His latest book, The Journey to CEO Success, is a #1 Amazon bestseller. Congrats, Patrick, and hello.
Hey, Melissa, it's great to be on another show today.
Yeah, you too. And you'll notice we have a guest with us today. I'm excited to welcome Dave Cook. Dave was inspired in college to become an entrepreneur by John Kemeny, who was Dartmouth's president and also the co-author of the BASIC computer language, which gave rise to the PC revolution. Kemeny required professors to incorporate some kind of programming on the school's time-sharing system into every course. Now, this was before PCs were invented, which gives you an idea of how ancient Dave is. Sorry about that, Dave. So by the time Dave graduated...
I'm glad we're interviewing a guest older than me.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. By the time Dave graduated, along with the dinosaurs, he spent a few years in a huge company. Then he decided to dive headfirst into the PC business as it was starting in the 80s. First as Computerland's original franchisees, and then as founder and CEO of several IT and software companies. He's currently the CEO and founder of InsiteOne in New Haven, Connecticut, which is one of the world's largest SaaS companies for storing digital medical images, with over 40 billion under management. Dave, wow, what a bio, and thank you for joining us today on LinkedIn Live.
My pleasure. Thanks, Melissa and Patrick. Great to be here.
Yeah. So Dave, welcome to our show. 70% of our waking hours is basically spent at work. So the journey is really important. And us leaders, we have tough but very rewarding jobs. And over here at Rhythm Systems, we really want to help everyone achieve their dreams, enjoy the journey, and be successful. So I'd like to first start with your journey, but you have a very unique and interesting journey, Dave, because you started InsiteOne, if I read correctly, sold it, and then you came back and you're running it again. So that is a very unique journey. I know that some of us entrepreneurs have dreams of doing that. Very few of us get that. So I'd love for you to just share a bit about your journey, how you got to InsiteOne, how you created it, how you started it, and then, and how you got to where you are today running it again.
Great. Sure. No, it's a long and sometimes bumpy journey to use your metaphor, but it's been great. I'm wouldn't have it any other way, but to pick up on Melissa's story about getting involved in time sharing and then PCs. The Computerland business was great early on. We were part of a revolution, before even the Microsoft existed or the IBM PC.
Yes.
The company grew enormously. We were doubling, sometimes tripling every year.
Wow.
The problem was that as fast as the sales were growing, the gross margin was declining in the opposite direction. So for every good good deed, there's a counteracting force, and so much competition came into it. So that was certainly a crisis that I probably talk about that later. But I learned in that path that getting into a commodity business and selling PCs, the downside is there's not a lot of protection in terms of creating, proprietary intellectual property. The intellectual property belonged to Apple or IBM, and the selling it were subject to the forces of competition. So that was an important lesson. Fortunately, I was able to escape by selling out to the franchisor, who was gobbling up some of the larger franchisees, and they ended up ultimately going out of business. This was during the 80s, before the internet existed. And Michael Dell, who'll come into the story a little later, pretty much put computer stores out of business because he could ship and deliver PCs a lot cheaper than people with bricks and mortar.
Yeah, he figured out how to use the supply chain to really give him a huge competitive advantage. I remember that because he started with that whole order online and get your laptop in 2 weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It was brilliant, and he's still out there doing good things and making tons of money. But after that lesson, I decided to stay in the IT computer software business because it was so exciting, but try to migrate into an area that had a little more protection in terms of creating intellectual property, mostly software. And so the company before InsiteOne, we designed a remote network management company as we went from sort of the PC era to the network era. And that company was focused on the healthcare, sold that to a Y2K consulting firm that was, like the other consulting firms, trying to scare the world into thinking that they had to spend tons of money on consulting to stay alive. But we had a client in that business who was just beginning a big hospital, healthcare provider, looking to transition all their medical imaging, which at the time was all film based. So if you went in, for an X-ray, it was literally film based and a lot of chemicals to develop the film and so forth. And digital imaging was just starting. And, I got involved in advising the hospitals on how they made this transition and what some of the early systems were to manage digital medical imaging for radiologists and in hospitals. And I saw a real opportunity there. The acronym, I'm trying not to use a lot of buzzwords, is PACS, P-A-C-S, for Picture Archival Communication System. In other words, generating the picture from your X-ray or MRI, communicating it around to the doctors and radiologists that needed to see it, communicating it outside of that, and all of this within a software system. So we knew that we were never going to be able to compete with the giants who were making the image acquisition devices, the General Electrics and Siemens and Philips that make $2 million MRI machines. But we had, expertise in the software communications network piece of it. So we focused on the A in that acronym, or archive, recognizing that as medical imaging went digital, the archive was just going to keep growing. These are important life and death, medical images that can't be compressed, for example. Some of them are, they're huge. Well, they're all huge images that can't be compressed, and they have to be essentially kept forever. So we built software, Linux-based software, from the ground up to sort of manage that whole process. Along the way, as we were beginning to scale and grow, Michael Dell had just gone public for the first time at Dell. This was in the 2010s, and we caught his attention. He's very, very philanthropic to this day. He spends a lot of effort and money on children's cancer research and so forth. And he said, "Gee, this company has a lot of medical images that possibly could be used for this. It's a great business." So he bought the company, and I had brought in a sort of a replacement as CEO who was in the medical imaging business at that point. So I didn't go to work for Dell, but I owned the data center in Connecticut where I'm sitting now, and so I became a vendor to Dell. And
So you kept the data center. You sold. So the data center was part of InsiteOne as well. And you sold the software
but the
side.
data center was owned by me personally. So
Okay.
the
Gotcha.
company had a lease, so Dell took over the lease. But the point is, so even though I wasn't working for Dell per se, I still stayed involved. I had sort of started the company.
So before you continue your story, there are a couple of really good lessons I want to just make sure our audience heard you. First is, in your early beginnings, you realized, and not everybody realizes this, you realized that you were selling commodity back in the computer land stuff. And you realized that commodity is just going to go down in price. Now, a lot of people know that today, but sometimes it's hard to really recognize that when you're in the middle of that, because we don't want to think of ourselves as selling a commodity. We want to think of ourselves as selling, cool stuff. So first, congratulations that you noticed that. And then secondly, the second key lesson I think you shared was you thought, okay, I should get into something that gives me intellectual property, intellectual capital. And that's why you got into the software side. And so that part, I just want to make sure that our audience heard those two key lessons that I kind of picked up on before you continue. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. Those are the key points. So you picked up on them pretty quickly. There are a lot of people that have very successful commodity businesses, but you gotta have a lot of the right ingredients in terms of capital and being able to withstand, surviving a business with just a couple of points margin and that's cushion.
I always tell people that, look, you're in a commodity business, then you're going to end up in a price war.
Right.
And price should never be, you should never look at price unless that is your strategy. So, unless it's your strategy, and you pointed out, like when Michael Dell did that whole, supply chain magic that he did, he actually put the PC world into a price war. I remember that vividly. And because he could, because he figured out how to do all the supply chain stuff and deliver stuff so inexpensively that he kind of crushes competition with a price war. So for all those folks out there who are listening, entrepreneurs out there, don't get into a price war unless that is your strategy. If that's your strategy, that's fine. But if it's not your strategy, you get dragged into a price war, not a very good day. So, so continue your story about, now you
sure. Well, just to pick up on the Michael Dell story too. So he had gone public, raised all this money, and he bought 10 companies or so, including our InsiteOne. And the biggest company he bought was Perot Systems. Many of your listeners will remember Ross Perot, who had an IT outsourcing company back in the early days of PCs where everyone was being driven crazy by Windows and LANs and servers and all this stuff, and all these new applications. So big companies needed huge help desks to support their users. Well, that's what Ross Perot built. Michael Dell bought it. And shortly after that, he decided he didn't like being a public company because, he had Wall Street breathing down his neck every quarter. Well, maybe you cut prices too far this quarter. They're going to be off. And then Carl Icahn tried to do a hostile takeover. So anyways, long story short, he decided to take Dell private, and he needed like $60 billion to do that. How that relates to InsiteOne is that to raise that $60 billion to go private, he ended up selling all the companies he had just acquired as a bundle. So when the bundle, the big apple in the basket was Perot Systems, and he told all the people, looking to acquire the basket that, it's all or nothing. You got to take all these businesses together. Well, the winning bidder was NTT Data out of Japan, and NTT is the Japanese version of AT&T with close to 400,000 employees worldwide, and huge company. They wanted to establish an IT foothold in the U.S. Pro Systems gave them the ability to do that. Unfortunately for InsiteOne, we're a software company. We're not a help desk type company, and we were pretty small compared certainly to Pro Systems. So over the couple of years we were at NTT, the business did not thrive. They didn't understand it. They didn't invest in it. They weren't even selling it actively. And then COVID happened, 4 or 5 years ago, and the Japanese owners sent out a memo worldwide to their thousands of offices. We need to close this many offices and data centers. And our data center here in Connecticut was on that list, which I happen to own. And that presented a problem for the people running the U.S. division because we were storing these critical health images at huge volumes that could not be easily or quickly moved. So as landlord, I went to them and said, look, I'll solve your problem. You give me the company back. You don't really want it anyways. You don't understand it. And I'll let you off. I'll let you off your lease, and you can, tell the folks in Japan that everything's copacetic. So I'm simplifying it, but it actually that was just of the plan. My pitch to the decision makers, led by by a team of women who were awesome. They were totally smart and reasonable about the whole thing, and we agreed to a win-win-win type structure that was a win for them, a win for us, and a win for our customers. And we made it happen, and we closed in March of 2020, I guess, because we're coming up on, I guess, five years. And it's gone great. It was a really easy transition with them. We had weekly calls, so we're on our own, and we're trying to follow the advice in your book, Patrick, on growing the business. And one of the first things we did was, become Rhythm customers. I mean, I knew that we needed to have a platform to help us get out of the bureaucratic malaise that the team had been in, and put together a plan to grow and innovate.
That's wonderful. So what is your dream now for the company?
Well, just again, to grow and innovate are two of the hallmarks that your team at Rhythm that helps us put our plans together. Those are keys. The company, the business was not growing under NTT, and frankly, it wasn't really innovating either. And as I think we all know from our personal lives and business lives, if you're not growing, you're doing something else which usually isn't good. So it's
Dave, how many employees do you have now?
We have about 40 in total, including some developers overseas, but 30 some in the US that are the spread. Part of being part of Dell and then NTT was that the population of the staff sort of became very geographically diverse. Definitely. Initially, we were a Connecticut-based company. We still have about maybe 18 employees in Connecticut, but we've got folks in Florida, Texas, Massachusetts, and then as well as these developers overseas.
And I'm wondering, do you have any people on staff who originally started with you or were there in your early part of your journey and now are back?
Absolutely. Great question. Awesome. I mean, we really pride ourselves in the fact that we've had like zero turnover. I mean, I just had lunch with the bunch of our guys that were in the office yesterday that have been, the company was originally started in 1999. And so that's over 25 years. And at the lunch table yesterday, 4 out of the 6 of us had been at the company since the beginning.
Wow, that's crazy. And that
did
says a lot
back?
about you.
Did they come back, or were they there the entire journey after?
No, they went through as they keep pointing out to me, I'm the one that sort of the prodigal son. It wasn't really, I wasn't, Dell, they didn't really need me when they bought the company.
Yes.
A lot of companies don't want the entrepreneurs around anyways to sort of stick, get in the middle of the way they want to run the company. But these folks I'm talking about, and we have, out of the 30 or so we have in the U.S., probably over 20 of them have been with the company more than 20 years. So, but they lasted through Dell, through NTT. So they, they've seen the gamut of, how small businesses are run versus, big bureaucratic organizations.
So was your culture intact? I've seen when companies get sold, lots of times people leave because the buyer changes the culture, all kinds of stuff. So did your company's culture actually stay intact and all these people continued?
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Very much. I mean, we lost a couple, but, since the beginning, we were very focused on what our mission was. We didn't over expand, and it's very technical, when you're dealing with healthcare and very complex digital medical imaging, it's something you have to be very precise about. And we've got people that are very passionate about our vision and mission, and we've been really lucky.
Yeah. Dave, your journey is really interesting in the fact that you started it, had some off time, then came back to it, and sounds like you're really thriving with a group of people who really have been there since the beginning. And I always like to throw in a couple of kind of fun questions that people may not know about you. So if we were hitting the road together, when I think of journey, I think of road tripping. What is that one snack that you just cannot not have when you're having a road trip with your friends?
Oh, gee, that's that's a good one. Well, I've become my kids actually have forced me into becoming a pretty healthy eater. So I'm going to sound pretty stupid by saying an apple, but
come on, Dave.
Apples and coffee are sort of my go-to snacks. That's pretty boring, though, isn't it?
No, it's not boring. It's very healthy.
Yeah.
An apple a day, keeps that doctor away.
Yeah.
So, that's great. That's great. So, my new book talks about one of the practices about having an early warning system to kind of protect you against getting surprised, bad surprises, getting blindsided. And in your journey, I'm curious if you can share a story about something that an unhappy surprise that blindsided you, that of course you survived because you're here successful today. What did you learn from that negative surprise, and how did you survive it? And what did you do then to protect yourself against future surprises?
Great question. Well, these journeys are always long and complicated. And what I did tell you about the journey I just described is, for us to grow initially, we had to raise, a considerable amount of venture capital because we had to build very sophisticated software. We had to build actually more than 2 data centers because we needed this. So we had 2 main venture capitalists, and right as we were really starting to scale, I was invited into a board meeting, and one of the VCs said, "Well, it's time for us to replace you," without really any warning at all. And I mean, they didn't kick me out the door because I was the founder and owned a lot of shares, but he felt that, well, you're in the medical imaging space, you really don't have a lot of, native expertise in medical imaging. So we think as the company starts scaling, we need to bring in someone. So fortunately, I had a lot to say about the person that came in as CEO. I became chairman, and that guy's still my partner now. So when we spun the company back, 4 years ago from NTT, I brought him in as one of my partners, but I did not invite any venture capitalists. So, we've been able to do it. Look, VCs, they've got their stereotypes and they do what they do, which is necessary for young companies, especially if they need capital to build their model. But there can be surprises. So,
yeah.
That's great. Thank you. So, so I have a time machine question, which is that, given all your experience today, if you travel back to some critical issue midpoint in your career, so not all the way to the beginning, but some issue, what advice would you give your younger self that's dealing with challenges from all your experience today?
Well, it would really go back to that first point you made, Patrick, about commodity businesses and the importance of building proprietary intellectual capital, IP type businesses, and that relates to sort of the first leg of my journey in the PC revolution at Computerland. We were growing so quickly, and it was sort of a new business. Again, it was before the internet, so we had to do all our own distribution to all of our stores and so forth. We built a lot of systems to operate our business internally, and they were great systems. So I guess the answer to your question is, if I had more backbone, I would have said, well, gee, let's get out of this commodity business and monetize some of these systems which we built, which frankly, this is before Excel existed or Quicken or Spread. We built our own accounting system and point of sale system, and who knows. So that's one of those dreams, but it's not easy just quitting a company.
That's cool. You were building systems without realizing that those were monetizable systems.
Yeah,
so
right.
Good lesson. Good lesson. So, my last question. I always ask this question for every guest we have. Our podcast is about the journey, and our main audience are CEOs just like you and me. And so, my question would be, what advice can you leave our audience for them to have the best journey for a successful and a joyful life? And I say joyful because I've met a lot of people who are successful, but then they're not happy and they're not joyful. So it's both. I want to have both. What advice can you leave us with about having a journey for the best successful and joyful life?
Well, one of the pieces of advice I would leave is you need to know where you're going on that journey. I mean, it's like the Alice in Wonderland. Alice asks the Cheshire Cat, "Well, where do I go from here?" And the Cheshire Cat says, "Well, depends on where you want to go."
Yeah.
So I think it's really important to have a vision of what that destination is, and I mean, you talk about that really very, very succinctly and passionately in your book, and again, it's not to plug Rhythm Systems, but we've been very, very happy and successful users because it helps us really clarify and articulate what that vision is, and then it's up to the leaders of the company, not just me, but our managers, to put some passion behind that and motivation. I mean, the quick thing I always tell tell people, whether they're employees or, prospects, is that, we want to have fun and make money. It's really that simple.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not making money, you're not doing something right by the customer. And if you're not having fun, then, but when those two things merge, it's a great journey.
Mm-hmm.
By having fun, it means that you've got satisfied customers and satisfied employees, and and you're delivering a service that they're happy to pay for. So.
Wow.
Thank you very much,
Dave, that's so well said. It really was. Thank you for sharing your journey with us today. It was really, really interesting. Just the bumps and sort of the what your what came out of it is amazing. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
And I really want to encourage our listeners, if they haven't already done so, please purchase Patrick's book. It's The Journey to CEO Success. It's available on Amazon. It is a #1 Amazon bestseller. We put a QR code right on the screen so you can go ahead and purchase it. And it looks like it's $9.99 for a limited time. So that's great. And next week, we encourage you to join us. We will be talking with Stuart Bentley. He's the president and founder of Trios College. Can't wait to hear his journey and see how he became who he is. So thank you, Dave. Thank you, Patrick. And until next time, please, you guys, go out there and enjoy that journey.
Okay.
Bye now.
Bye-bye. Thank you.